Welcome to SF Nonprofit Spotlight, brought to you by SF Commons. I'm Keli Dailey. Life right now for children with special healthcare needs and disabilities can be challenging. Routines are upended, and the uncertainty can be scary, even for adults. Working to get these children the assistance they need is an organization called Support for Families of Children with Disabilities. It connects parents to resources and providers, and it helps San Francisco kids access their legal right to a free, appropriate public education. To talk about Support for Families, I'm joined by Development Director Rachel Goldstein and its former Education Director, Joe Goyos. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Rachel, I'd love to start with you. You currently raise funds for Support for Families, but you accessed this organization because you have a son with a disability. Can you take us back to the pre-pandemic, pre-quarantine times, and maybe tell us about how you were impacted by this organization, how your son's educational journey has been affected?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure. And yeah, I became connected with Support for Families because I am a parent with a child with a disability. We became connected many years ago. He's almost 16 now. And everything that I've learned about getting the services that I need for my son, I learned through all the support I received at Support for Families. And life pre-COVID was challenging, but life after COVID is even more challenging. And the reason why it's more challenging primarily is because of the isolation that we have, and we're not connected directly with school in person. And so we now have to receive my son's education through distance learning, which has been quite challenging. And in addition to that, he's not receiving all of the services that he needs because we don't have connection with the direct service providers.
That's right. I've been told that public schools are really how children with special needs come into contact with so many of the support systems they need beyond just education. Can you talk about what your experience is right now? How are you coping?
Yeah, so some of the many services that families receive outside of the school district can be therapy services and or respite services, or just connecting with the various agencies. And because of that isolation now, everything has basically moved to online, to Zoom. And so children can't actually receive the therapy services that they were receiving before, often because the therapists need to be in close proximity with the children that they're working with. And so because of that, they can't actually receive some of the services. Some services like speech therapy can translate to the virtual space, but most of them cannot.
Just to get back to how Support for Families came into your life, did it connect you with new information that you had no idea about? Like, can you take us back to that moment when you discovered this group?
Oh my goodness. I knew nothing about this world, and it was a very eye-opening experience getting connected with Support for Families. I really didn't have much in the way of experience with exposure to the world of disabilities, and so really I knew nothing on this journey. And so I learned so much, not only about how to navigate the various services that are out there, but also about special education law and how my son has rights under IDEA, which is the Individual Disabilities Education Act.
And Joe,
yes.
taking new families who are unfamiliar with this particular world when they have a child with special needs, or when those needs are identified, can you take us back to how this organization was formed?
Yeah, so similar to many things in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, you had three people in a garage with an idea. There were three moms who happened to have kids with disabilities and identified a need for a support group. And they started this small support group in a garage in San Francisco. And as it grew a little bit more, they moved into one of the local hospitals. And from there, our agency grew to be just under a staff of about 50 folks now.
Great. So when you say a garage in San Francisco, was this the high-flying 80s when Jobs and Wozniak were in their garages?
Yeah, it was 1982. So it's right around that time where most of Silicon Valley was starting to bloom.
And I can imagine, Joe, that the needs of families have intensified with the pandemic. Maybe can you tell me how life has changed in 2020, and what are you seeing with the demand from families currently?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, a lot of our calls were around accessing special education services, regional center services, things of that nature. And when COVID struck and all of a sudden there was uncertainty in employment and school, a lot of our calls shifted and it became families were having issues with food insecurity, with securing their rent, with just basically providing the basic needs for their families. They didn't have access to the internet and technology, so distance learning was challenging. And we're no longer able to access their services as Rachel was describing, because many of them are in person and they don't translate well to a virtual platform. So we did see a shift from families who were worrying about their kids' education to families worrying about their survival.
And Joe, the shift to online services through support for families, you're no longer doing any in-person work, but can you tell me a little bit about any optimistic or silver lining thing that you're seeing with the shift to, say, online workshops?
Oh, absolutely. It's been pretty spectacular. So for years, we've been talking about trying to transition to offering webinars, but we always thought, since we reached out to high needs communities, that there was a tech divide and that this might not be equitable. And when COVID struck, it actually pushed us to that. And what we found was that our Latino families, our Chinese families, our underserved families in the 7 poor zip codes in San Francisco all started to move along with us. It was pretty challenging in the beginning because we hadn't done anything. And I think it was like March 16th, we decided we were making the move. And by 2 Thursdays later, we were trying to throw everything up online. So it was a little bit of a rough start. But what we found was that when it came to a lot of our regular workshops, our numbers doubled. When it came to our Spanish workshops, the numbers doubled as well. And for our IEP clinic in Cantonese, we normally used to get 3 to 4 people, and it got up to 39 this last one. So we're reaching a larger audience, and we're realizing that our misconceptions about our community have been encouraging.
IEP, that's the individualized education plan that each child has tailored to them for their public education, correct?
Correct. It is a legal document between the school district and the family that details all the services that need to be provided. And yeah, it's what dictates what a student gets. It lays out their free and appropriate public education.
That is amazing to hear that with the transition to online, you've helped expand the reach to families. And speaking of an expanding reach, Rachel, you do ask the public for support for this organization. And I hear there's a fun thing happening in October. Can you tell us a bit about it?
We have our annual fundraiser coming up. It's going to be taking place on Friday, October 2nd. And in years past, we have had our annual fundraiser as an in-person event, but due to COVID-19, we've had to pivot just like everybody else. And we're going to be having our virtual fundraiser as a virtual live stream event. And so everybody in the community, everybody in the world, it's open to everyone and it's free, can log in on the night of Friday, October 2nd and participate. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll have the opportunity to learn about the organization and hear some family stories and have the opportunity to make donations as well.
That's the Wine and Recline event on October 2nd, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, I missed the name of it. It is Wine and Recline. So people can enjoy a glass of wine at home, recline, and join us for a night full of fun.
Those are two of my most favorite activities now with shelter in place. Joe, you have just relocated to Southern California with your family, leaving the position behind, but you've worked so hard to connect people. And I'm wondering if, you're thinking about all the red tape that families have to navigate and all the things that they have to learn about this new world. Can you maybe give us a sense of what you think the most important thing families need to know or to do to help level the playing field for their children?
I'd say it's maybe more than one thing. It's a couple things. One would be kind of get educated around the legal rights that your child has. Number two, I would say it would be connect with another group of parents. You can find out a lot more information by people who've gone through the journey before you and can give you kind of pointers that aren't in the actual law, but they've been workarounds and ways that families have found that things have worked for them. And then connecting with an agency like ours so you can have some ongoing support and some continued information. The more you learn, the more you'll need additional information. You'll be able to get by the easy problems, but when you find more difficult challenges, you'll still need someone to support you, and support for families will be there.
Lastly, Rachel, is there anything that you and your son would describe as successful for this school year, this fall?
So I think success can be measured in different ways, but really it has everything to do with the engagement on the other side of the screen. And so the spring was a little bit of a hustle for everybody to change into this digital way of learning. And so fortunately, the school district had some time to put together some improved strategies. And so we are seeing that here in the fall with really fantastic engagement, at least just from personal experience from his school staff. And it definitely has improved. But it is still a struggle, though, I will say. It's not the same as going to school in person.
Rachel and Joe, thank you so much for spending some time talking with us today, and I wish you the best of luck. It is a struggle, and I can only appreciate groups like yours for helping make life a bit easier for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Roxy Theater is a staple in San Francisco and the Mission District, and it's been around since 1911, so we think it's the oldest continually operating movie theater in the United States. When the Roxy was open before the pandemic closures, you could see any kind of movie, independent movies, old movies, new movies, and they have a ton of community partners, so it was definitely a community gathering space. Kelly Wiggin is joining us now. She's the operations manager at the Roxy. Thank you so much for doing the interview with us, Kelly.
Thanks so much for asking us to talk with you.
Yeah, it's great. And BAVAC and the Roxy have a good partnership as well. So it's great to hear what you've been doing. So, I mean, the first obvious question is, having had to close the actual cinema, the theater, back in March, what have you been up to in the months since at the Roxy?
Well, we've been showing movies online, which is not something we ever thought we'd be doing, but it's called virtual cinema. That's how a lot of brick and mortar movie theaters have adapted to being closed. So we're showing movies online, movies that would have been playing in the Roxy normally had we been open. So people can rent them for a couple of days, and it's about a 50-50 split between us and the film distributors.
That's great. How have you, what has the response been from people? Because if I think back to like those early days and weeks of the pandemic, we were all wondering how we're going to spend our time. Right. There was a lot of movie watching and a lot of friends kind of coordinating to watch together. Yeah, so how's that been?
We've been doing really well by it. Our theater has been doing better than most, I think, with virtual cinema. It's there's been a lot of times where we get our box office reports back, and it turns out that we have, we're the best performing theater in the country with certain titles, which is really kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what we would have been bringing in normally. I'd say it's about a 95% revenue decrease, which is a struggle, but our members and our audiences support us so much, and we've been hearing so much positive feedback, and people are glad to support us in any way that they can, which is it's really touching. And if we didn't have our members and all of our people reaching out to offer words of support, it would be pretty dark times over here.
I've always had the sense as a native San Franciscan and then like working at Bayback at the Mission that the Roxy is such a like community gathering place where you could go with your friends and then, talk about the movie afterwards. So we're missing that. But you told me that like, we've seen a lot of people who would do like either like Netflix party or like some kind of group watching together. So that's really cool that we have that option.
Yeah, it's always really fun when I hear about people saying like, "Oh, we watched this Roxy movie together, and it was almost as good as being back at the theater with you all."
Yeah, but you miss it, I'm sure. We all do.
Oh, I miss it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it work? To give us a little bit more details about what are you showing? How do you choose? How are you curating the films that are going on so you're doing virtual cinema now? How does it work? And what is it? Can you stream whenever and you can gather with your friends, or is it like a live showtime and you all have to be there? How's it working lately?
Well, we're showing a lot of what's being offered as a virtual titles like across the country. There's more and more that we can kind of pick and choose from. When it first started, there was only like a handful of things, and so we kind of had to show them because like Bacurau, but Kino Lorber put out, that was the first one, so everybody was showing Bacurau. But basically, we just ask ourselves, like, is this a Roxy title? Is this something we play in our regular theater? And by and large, what's come down the pike are things that we're into and we're excited about. We have a really cool, very artsy documentary called Space Dogs coming up, which is it takes as its starting point Laika, the dog that the Soviet space program put into space, and looks at the sort of spiritual descendants of Laika, these street dogs in Moscow, which is pretty cool. And we have some repertory titles as well. We've been showing Beau Travail, the Claire Denis film, which I'm a huge fan of.
How do people get involved? So do you buy a ticket, or I know you have like a membership program? That's over to the virtual cinema as well.
Yeah, Roxy.com is where we have all of our movies listed, and you just click on each title and they'll walk you through the process of how you get your ticket. You can, as soon as our titles are starting on Fridays, kind of in keeping with the tradition of movies opening on Fridays. So anytime you decide to rent it, you have it for a few days, and yeah, anytime you want. There aren't really any live show times.
So you can still get together with your friends at your appointed time,
right.
Or have a night in with a movie from the Roxy. And so similarly to the brick and mortar, to the being able to come to the theater, it's very community oriented, and you have events, not just showing movies, and that's happening online now, I understand as well, right? You have
we have a
series.
Yeah, our membership program has, we kind of launched this virtual aspect to it, virtual memberships, what we're calling it. And we have a members-only conversation series called Quick Takes, so we're inviting filmmakers to come and present like a short little snip of their work, either a short film or maybe like behind-the-scenes footage, and then talk about it with our members in a sort of group Zoom chat Q&A. We have one coming up this Wednesday, tomorrow, with Nicole Perlman and Malcolm Pullinger. They're going to be discussing a short film called The Slows. Nicole's worked on several Marvel movies and Detective Pikachu, so we're pretty excited about that one.
A little extra added value for being a member and part of the community.
Yeah, just a way for us to sort of like, see our members, if not in the flesh, then in the virtual realm, because we miss them so much.
Yeah. We all miss going to see a movie, and like we said, the community gathering and talking about it afterwards. So what a great kind of it's an alternative compensating. It's not exactly the same, but it's a good alternative to be able to cultivate still that sort of filmmaker, film lover little community and circles. How can people help? So of course, like we know that months now into the closures, some of us are able to work from home, but those who have jobs and businesses that need to be physically open are the ones who have been left sort of needing the most help. So for those who want to help and who love the Roxy, like what are the best ways to support you?
Well, the best way to support us would be to become a member. They start at $30 a year. You can go to roxy.com/membership and learn more about that. We're in the last weeks of our membership drive right now, so we're trying to get 300 new or renewing members to sign up, and we're getting there. I think we're going to do it, and we take donations too, of course. So all of that information is on roxy.com.
That's on your website. Yeah, we'll have that up on the screen. What, to kind of think more broadly, you know, a lot of people who live in San Francisco are newer to San Francisco, and, you know, maybe are living in the Mission and don't really know the Roxy's importance to the city and to the culture. I mean, you've been around since 1911, so not just like the legacy and the history, but also the cultural part. So what are some of the things about the Roxy's mission that you think are important, that people should know and that should be preserved, you know, to get through these difficult times?
We're here for our community. Like, first and foremost, we want our friends and neighbors, like underrepresented voices, people who make up demographically the Mission in San Francisco. We want to share their stories. Like, we want to amplify their voices. And so when we're programming, we always have that in mind. Like, yeah, we want the stories from here to be on our screen, however we can do that.
Yeah, for sure. And not just that, but the arts, you know, have been so essential. Like, when the arts, we hear about, like, you're losing the arts in schools, and you're losing the arts, you know, in sort of like cultural funding and things like that. And then all of a sudden we're all sitting at home, and that's what's getting us through, is music and movies and films and the cinema. So I think to have like a local organization like the Roxy and the storytelling that you do, especially for underserved communities, is like, I hope that we've all now seen the importance of the arts and storytelling to help us all get through these things.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. What is your hope of, like, how things are going to go, or what's going to happen in the next months? What are you hoping for?
Oh, golly. Well, yeah, we still don't really know when we're going to be able to reopen as an actual movie theater. That seems like it could be some months off. So my hope is that we can just sort of keep going in hibernation mode for as long as it takes for us to be able to reopen safely. Yeah, we're going to keep doing virtual cinema even after we reopen, I think. So hopefully we can get that really well established. We're going to be launching our own platform in a couple of weeks. I don't know if the date has been totally set yet, but it'll be roxyvirtualcinema.com. We'll have our own platform for a lot of the Roxy virtual titles that we've been showing, just to streamline the process a little bit.
So how would a viewer, a visitor, engage with that?
Well, we're still in the process of building it, but instead of having to be sent to all these different platforms, you know, a different one for every distributor for each movie that we're showing, we'll have all of them in one place, so you can just enter your information once as opposed to every single time, and setting up multiple accounts with Eventive and Eventbrite and Kino Marquee and all of the other ones. Yeah, just kind of establish the Roxy a little more solidly as its own destination in a virtual space.
And well deserved for all the hard work you're doing, for sure. Yeah, that was one of the things that really motivated me to highlight, and that you told me earlier, that, you know, we want people to know that, like, the Roxy's around, and just because the physical doors are closed, you're still
here.
Yeah,
we're still doing the best we can, and trying to, you know, share the magic of cinema, as cheesy as that sounds, with everybody, because that's what we live for.
Yeah, and maybe now need a little bit of help more than usual, and hopefully people will hear the call and step up.
Yeah, I mean, the Roxy's faced so many tough times over the years. It's got quite a colorful history, and I don't know that we've ever weathered a crisis quite like this one, but yeah, we can. I think we're doing
it. Yeah, we'll make it through. So, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up, that you want people to know or say about the Roxy, what you're doing now or what you're doing in the future?
Yeah, get a membership if you have the means that would support us really
So
quite
worth it. $30 a year. So worth it. And you knowing that you're donating and helping to something great. So
yeah, we're a nonprofit, none of us are pocketing any of this. We're just doing it because this is what we love.
yeah, total service to the city and our communities and telling stories. So thank you so much, Kelly. That was so great to hear. And people can go to your website to find out more and help out. And, I think San Franciscans are always good about supporting the arts. So we'll hope for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you today.
Yeah, it's great to talk. All right. Take care. Bye.